I feel like my non-binary partner and I may be incompatible. My partner, 30NB, and I, 30M, have been together for about 10 years now, married about 4. A year or so ago, they came out as non-binary. It was sort of gradual. They started hinting at it, then said they wanted to go by she/they. Then said their pronouns were they/them, but I could still call them she, before I eventually asked and confirmed that they would like me to use the non-binary pronouns as well. I am a straight man and don't really have Southeast Zool interest in non-binary folks. But of course, I didn't make any rash decisions about splitting because I love my partner. However, during this recent time, I feel like I have begun to lose attraction to them as I am attracted to women and they are presenting more gender neutral. When this initially started, they said that they were still the same person and only their pronouns were changing. However, the more I come to terms with them not being a woman, the more I see them as someone who I may not be compatible with. They've even mentioned some things that I am really not a fan of, such as wearing a binder or getting their voice lowered. This one we had an uncomfortable conversation about. Even more recently, they've had some health issues and it has made me really reevaluate our relationship. They are female health issues, which has highlighted my partner's gender identity as it comes up more frequently, including their disdain for their feminine parts. As a straight guy, it makes me wince and feel more disconnected from them. Outside of the gender topic, I've also felt like our relationship is a bit unequal. I make good money and pay for almost everything including rent, vacations, meals out, shared expenses, medical bills. They work and pay for most groceries, internet, and personal expenses. Despite paying for almost all the expenses, my partner frequently talks about how broke they are to their friends. It frustrates me as I feel like I am providing a very comfortable lifestyle where they only need to support the bare minimum of their expenses, but their friends may see me as selfish and unsupportive. They explicitly turn down more hours at work and have no interest in finding a higher-paying job. I try deliberately to not pay for everything because I want my partner to be an independent, competent adult. However, I still find myself helping with a lot their personal challenges while also taking care of everything that's shared. I've paid for all the medical bills, and it makes me feel like I'm keeping our entire life afloat, which is stressful. We've recently discussed buying a house, and I can't help but think I will end up taking the entire mental load of that other than actually picking a cute place. This is exacerbated by the fact that I work with many professional women who support themselves, and I can't help wonder what it would be like to not carry almost the entire weight of the relationship. I feel like my partner folds during challenges, and I have to lift them and the situation back up. Just before the health issues began, I found out my partner was in $3,000 worth of debt. The debt came during a time when they were unemployed, but we were still doing fine overall. At the time, they apparently didn't want to ask me for money. Eventually, they set up a payment plan and paid a couple of installments, but didn't check up on it to make sure the payments kept happening. I don't really understand how one could neglect that. $3,000 of debt to them would be like $10,000 to me, certainly something I would not forget. I paid it off for them, but it highlighted their lack of financial acuity and responsibility. I feel like I have to not only keep tabs on all of my shit and our shared shit, but their shit, too. Like I got my license renewed at the same time they did. It took me less than a month after mine expired while theirs expired half a year before. Also, our fitness/activity level has been slowly drifting apart. I began working out in high school and still do. As I've gotten older, I've taken it more seriously because I want to be active and healthy for as long as I can. While my partner is healthier than at the beginning of our relationship, it has been in part because I have constantly tried to urge them to exercise and be more active. Before the health issues, it was starting to be more consistent, but I'm not sure if that would have lasted. I kind of just wish they were as into being active as I was. I don't want to be going for runs and climbing mountains in my 50s while they're just sitting around. I don't want to be the person driving every aspect of our relationship. I want someone that pushes me to be better, too. I'm sure this post comes off very negative, but that's kind of why I'm making it. I still love my partner very much and always will, whatever happens in our future. We are good together on zoomed-in level, but these high-level topics concern me. Overall, I'm not looking for people to tell me to leave or stay. I just want some validation that I'm not having a weird episode and would be throwing away years of history for something inconsequential. If I do decide that this needs to be addressed in our relationship, the first step is going to be counseling before anything drastic happens. And now to the next story. Vacation with sister took a sour turn, and she doesn't see what she did wrong. I, 36F, was invited to go on a work trip to California and was allowed to bring someone with me. Due to the area, I decided to bring my sister, 40F, as it was all perfectly suited to her. I had the last day of the trip off from work and wanted to do a coastal trip, as the last time I'd walked in the ocean was when I was 7. By the end of the second day of the trip, I'd fallen sick. I was pretty much bedridden the entire time, but my fever had broke the night before the coastal trip, so I grabbed a pillow at my sister's suggestion and slept in the back of the car the whole way there. I knew my sister had a few stops she wanted to make, 2 of which were seafood related. Since I don't eat seafood, and the smell would have done a number on me, I stayed sleeping in the car. I woke up at her second stop, which was a coffee house. She handed me something to eat, and had gotten me a tea for my stomach. I drifted off again, only to realize that we were picking up speed and leaving the area. Please keep in mind, I thought she had one more stop to make and was trying to gain as much energy as I could for my part of the trip. When I noticed what was happening, I popped up and saw no ocean. Although I begged her to turn around, she'd said we'd driven too far already. Her side. We'd already driven half an hour by the time I noticed, and the vibes I was giving off told her that I regretted going on this day trip. I should have spoken up as soon as we got into town to express what exactly it was that I wanted. She shouldn't have to wake me up every 10 minutes to see if I wanted to do anything. My side. Her timeline made no sense to me, so I looked it up as soon as we got back to our rental. I was already crying in the back seat after her refusal for a few minutes before we hit a certain town. That was an 11-minute drive from the town we'd left. So we were maybe 5 minutes out of town, not half an hour. She also could have easily asked me what I wanted to do when she made what she knew was her final stop. I was awake, and she knew it because she handed me food. While I was incredibly pissed about this, it was what followed that made me question our entire relationship. Not only had she lied about the distance we drove, but an hour or so after we returned, she proceeded to hang out on the patio right outside my part of rental and video chat with 2 to 3 people to make fun of me for being upset with her, saying I could find my own way back from the airport when we returned, 4-hour drive from where we live. We took her car, and called me a slew of names all while laughing. Eventually, I go outside and call her out on her terrible behavior, let her know that she didn't just piss me off, but did major damage to our relationship, and reminded her just how long it had been since I had the opportunity to walk the shore of the ocean. She'd last been able to a year and a half prior. We had a good relationship before this, but her behavior out there on the patio reminded me of the mean girls from Carrie, throwing tampons at her. On the way back, I managed to switch seats with someone so I didn't have to sit next to her on the plane. I told her I had in fact found an alternative ride back, and that I just couldn't have her in my life without genuine remorse. While she admitted her behavior on the patio was mean, she immediately gave excuses, saying she was intoxicated and just trying to enjoy her vacation. I responded that I was glad she had such a good vacation, but it was a shame she felt ruining my part of the vacation, and mocking me for it somehow made her experience better. Not only was this originally my vacation that I invited her on, but she hadn't actually said she was sorry for even that part on the patio, just admitted it was uncalled for. Every restaurant I originally showed her for this trip was vetoed, as they weren't adventurous enough. Just shrugged them off until the restaurants where I struggled to find even one thing on the menu were the only ones left, and became the winners. The only restaurant I actually wanted to go to was on the first night, which ended up being for the best, since I stayed back sick the other nights. But everything about the trip was catered to her tastes, and had little to nothing to do with mine. Except for that coastal trip. Apparently, she won't be the one calling me first, and is standing her ground. She won't acknowledge lying to me about the distance, despite me pointing it out several times in texts, and still maintains that I should have spoken up as soon as we got into town if I wanted more than to see the ocean from the parking lot of her seafood place. and that she isn't a mind reader. I explained she didn't have to be a mind reader when I woke up right after we left town and begged her to turn around. That was me flat out telling her what I wanted, and it wasn't even close to being too late at that point. For the amount of support my sister has always demanded, it just seems like a slap in the face for her to not show me the same during one of the few times I showed something was important to me. When I was crying in the back seat, that was probably the third time she's seen me cry in 10 years. I once had to comfort her when she was crying because she couldn't find the right area rug for her house. She knows I am much less of an emotional person than she is, so I think she absolutely should have taken me seriously. The coastal trip was 1 week ago today, and we haven't spoken since last Monday. I have no idea if she spent this last week reflecting on her actions, but I stand by that I won't have a relationship with someone who bullies me for her own amusement and lies to me just so she can get back to doing the things she wanted to do on the trip. I need a real apology and genuine remorse for her actions, and won't be the meek baby sister anymore. I'm used to her being selfish, but when her being selfish takes away a major opportunity for me, that's crossing my boundaries. My stepfather says I just need to let this go, and her husband also requested I do so, but understands why I can't. To me, if I let this go, I'm telling her that her behavior is okay, and inviting her to walk all over me for the rest of our lives. On the other hand, she stayed firm on the fact that I should have discussed exactly what I wanted as soon as we arrived in the area, instead of waiting until she was done with the things she wanted to do. Next story, Story 3. Went above and beyond to help someone and got rude attitude back. So I was a graduate assistant for the dean at my university last year. The previous admin assistant, AA, was responsible for handling the annual dean's list letter mail merge and printing process, a huge, tedious task involving hundreds of letters. But then the AA quit her job after 30 years to pursue her own dream. The school hired a brand new AA to replace her. The new AA had absolutely no idea what she was doing. I'm talking didn't even know how to use Google Drive and writing emails. But I tried to be patient and help her learn. I basically helped her with literally every single thing in the office that I had to learn myself. I knew the dean's list letter process was going to be really tough for her, so before I graduated, I told both the dean and the new AA that I would help her through it one more time, even though it wasn't my responsibility. Fast forward to when it was time to do the letters. The new AA emailed me, and I told her I'll come in and walk her through everything. But then she texted me and said she already had someone else print all the letters, and she would fold them in a way that doesn't need labels to put it in the envelope with clear windows. I was like, good for her. At least she figured it out. Then, one day later, she texted me and said she doesn't like how this works. She doesn't know how to fold them correctly, and she would prefer the labels instead, and asked me to come and help her. I was like, okay, I'll help with that. So I drove to the school, and the letters are all out of order on the wrong paper. I gently point this out, and she totally freaked out on me, saying I should have told her about the special paper earlier, even though I offered to help from the beginning. Like, how am I supposed to know she had someone else helped her? She didn't let me know until she printed all the letters out. And she was like, when I told you I printed all the letters out, you should have asked me about the paper. Like what? I assumed if she managed to have someone else to print it for her, that person should know, or at least text me, hey, I have someone help me print out the letters. Are there anything I need to know? But no. She got done without me knowing and got mad at me for not telling her. Am I supposed to read her mind or something? Anyway, I end up having to print the labels twice because she didn't like the first ones. Then I help her organize everything to email the letters to the advisors. I even write out detailed instructions. The whole time I'm thinking, I really should be home studying for my MCAT. When I say I have to go after the labels printing, she got upset, saying I promised to help her stick the labels on the envelopes. I told her I have to go home and study, and that's a basic task she can definitely do herself. It is time-consuming, but she can do it herself. But she just keeps going on about how I broke my promise and how I told her I would help, but then I didn't help. I was like, what? Honestly, if she asked nicely, I would have had some empathy and spent at least 30 minutes to help her. But she literally demanded me to do it when it is her job? We argued and I left because I was tired of her BS. She kept cutting me off when I was trying to point out the whole thing is a mess right now, and printing out the labels is the last thing I could have done for her. She should have just asked another lady who printed the letters to help her, but she asked me, who is not even working there anymore. It is not even my responsibility. I don't get paid for it. And I came all the way there to help her, wasting my time. And all I received was, hey, you told me you would help, but you don't help. I'm so frustrated. I went way above and beyond to help her, and instead of being grateful, she accuses me of not keeping my words. If she had just waited for me in the first place, none of this would have been an issue. We could have finished the way faster and more efficient. I went out of my way to help with something I'm not even responsible for, and this is what I get. I just don't understand the ingratitude. And last story. Entitled Nephews Mad at Me. In 2016, I bought a house, and less than a month later, my brother was evicted so the rental could be sold. He had just had a serious health issue and was not cleared back to work, so I allowed him to move in with me. During this time, his kid's mom had issues with the oldest, 14M, and told the cops she'd rather have child abandonment charges than have him in her home. So I stepped up and let him move in. The issue was that he didn't like his mom's habit, and he was very vocal about it. During this time, Dad got a job that required lots of travel, so my nephew stayed with me, and both parents notarized a paper giving me authority over him and to act as a parent for school, etc. Less than a year later, the younger son was kicked out as well, and he moved in. My house was only a 3-bed, so I ended up with the living room as my bedroom. Both boys stayed with me off and on until after COVID. Dad got a GF and moved into her place, but it wasn't big enough for the kids, too. By that point, the oldest was over 18 and the younger was just a few months away. During the time my brother and his boys stayed with me, they brought all kinds of stuff to my house. Multiple trucks they got cheap to fix and resell, used tires and other auto parts, tools, etc. At one point, they had over a half-dozen vehicles sitting in my yard. My neighbors started to show their displeasure with the situation, and I'd end up cleaning up their mess. This went on for a couple of years. They dragged stuff here, and I end up cleaning up the mess they made of my property. I kept asking them nicely to get their stuff off the property, but I never pushed. But this year was the final straw. In March, I got notice from the county to clean it up, or I was going to get fined. I was able to get it clean enough that I didn't get fined. But once again, I did 90% of the cleanup, and very little was mine. So I decided enough was enough. I told both nephews they have until 6 p.m. on May 31st, 2024, to get their stuff off my property, or it is forfeit. They've come a couple of times and gotten stuff, but every time they complain about the deadline and try to make me feel sorry for them, claiming they don't have a way to haul stuff or a place to put it. I tell them every time that I don't care. They have had years to get their stuff, and I'm not giving them an extension. Now the younger is posting on FB gripping G about a certain someone who is selling his stuff and throwing it away and won't give him time to get it. I'm blocked from seeing these posts, but my sister has seen them, and everyone who knows the boys knows they have stuff stored at me place. On top of everything else, I always told the boys they were not allowed to bring anyone to my house without approval. They did anyways and brought people they knew were thieves or dopeheads or both. I've had a bunch of stuff stolen. 4x8 utility trailer, generator, post auger I never even got out of the box before it was gone. Tons of tools. Someone even stole the starter from under my truck and broke into my truck and stole some new parts one had to install. Then, on Saturday before Mother's Day, I woke up to find my motorcycle gone. I have another week for the police to investigate before insurance will make a decision, and I have had to bum rides this entire time. My sister can't believe the way our nephews are acting and talking about me, given everything I've done for them. I'm just so fed up that I'm on the verge of going LC for a while. These nephews of mine are the most entitled jerks I've ever dealt with.